Have you heard of Bahubali, literally translated to the one with powerful arms? No, I'm not talking about the movie, but about the giant hero who has been revered for the last 2500 years. Hello, I'm Madhavi Sardesh Pandey, and welcome to my channel Indian Aesthete. I'm an artist, art historian, and a technology futurist. In this series of videos, I look at some of the masterpieces of ancient Indian sculpture and I try to analyze the inspiration that led to their creation.
Today, let's look at the truly awesome monolithic image of Bahubali at Shravan Belgola in Karnataka. What is most remarkable about this 59-foot image is its perfection and beautiful face. Captured in a moment of Keval Jnana, having gained the highest state of consciousness, the expression can be described as nothing less than sublime. It is called Gommateshwara in Kannada, meaning the handsome god. It is the largest freestanding monolithic image in Asia from the ancient world and is visible from several kilometers away. It is dated by historians to have been carved between 981 to 983 CE. This statue is lustrated every 12 years with streams of milk, sugarcane juice, fragrant pastes of sandalwood and turmeric, and in the past with gold and silver flowers, and sometimes even precious stones.
In the last Mahabhisheka, which was held in 2018 and which I was lucky to witness, lakhs of devotees from across the country came to witness this spectacular ritual. There is a lot of information about this image online and videos and blogs and books. So, what's different about my story? I'm tracing the artistic lineage and trying to form a hypothesis on why all of a sudden the cult of Bahubali became so important in the late 10th century. Before I start, let's take a quick look at Jainism, which is one of the oldest religious traditions in India.
The three main pillars of Jainism are ahimsa or non-violence, anekantavada or non-absolutism, and aparigraha or asceticism. It has two major sects. The word Digambara, Dika plus Ambara, means one whose clothing is the directions. Literally, it means that the ascetics of this sect are naked, while Shvetambara means Shweta or white plus Ambara, those who wear white clothes. This schism in Jainism occurred quite early, perhaps in the 3rd century BCE. Bahubali is not one of the 24 Tirthankaras or teachers, but is revered in the Digambar Jain tradition because he is considered to have been the first to have achieved the state of enlightenment called Keval Jnana. So, on with the story of Bahubali.
Bahubali was the second son of Rishabhanatha or Adinatha, the first of the Jain Tirthankaras, who ruled Ayodhya in about 3000 BCE. After Rishabhanatha renounced the kingdom and became an ascetic, Bahubali's elder brother Bharata wanted to be acknowledged as a Chakravartin or a supreme ruler. Bahubali did not agree and met Bharata on the battlefield. Instead of shedding the blood of armies, the brothers decided to engage in one-on-one competitions. Bahubali won all of them and was about to fling his brother down to the ground in the last wrestling combat. However, at that moment he felt remorse that he was fighting his elder brother over material things like land. He renounced his kingdom and started to do penance, standing in meditation in the Kayotsarga or the body abandonment pose. Over time, creepers entwined his limbs and birds made nests in his hair. Yet, he didn't gain spiritual liberation. After 1 year elapsed, Bharata and his sisters visited him and expressed their sorrow. At this moment, Bahubali felt liberated and achieved Keval Gyan, the first in the Jain tradition to do so. Let's now look at the evolution of the imagery of Bahubali. In the early centuries prior to the Common Era, Digambar Jainism spread in parts of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. There are a lot of rock cut caves, temples, and structural temples in these regions from the 2nd century BCE onwards. We find early bronze and copper images of Bahubali from the 6th century CE onwards. The small image in the Metropolitan Museum in New York is quite interesting. Look at the locks of hair in the back view. These long strands of hair on Bahubali's shoulders link him to the iconography of his father, Rishabhnath, and the creepers entwining his limbs become quite an identifier for Bahubali. There's a similar image in the Chhatrapati Shivaji Museum in Mumbai. The earliest large stone carving of Bahubali is seen at the late 6th century cave at Badami in North Karnataka. It stands in a niche. The enchanting figure of Bahubali stands in the Kayot Sarga pose, surrounded by snakes, while creepers are seen growing on his limbs. Bharata and his sisters are beseeching him to stop his penance. A similar image is seen in one of the entrance niches at the 7th century Meena Basadi cave at Aihole, which is not very far away from Badami. Here, Bharata is missing, and we see two female figures representing his sisters, Brahmi and Sundari, standing beside him, pulling away the creepers on his body, and celestial beings watching the event from the sky. This representational formula continues right up to the 10th century. Look at an example from the Jain cave at Ellora, or the one at Kalugumalai in Tamil Nadu. Interestingly, Bahubali is almost always a secondary figure in the Shvetambara Jain tradition. In Central Indian temples from this period, we do find some images, but they are not placed in a very prominent position. And even at Digambar Jain sites, Bahubali is just one of the figures with no special treatment given to the image.
The only image of Bahubali that is seen standing alone, apart from the Tirthankaras, has been found at Arathapur in Mandya district near Mysore. The 12 feet tall image stands on a hillock adjacent to a complex of Jain temples or basadis constructed in the 9th century, which have been excavated very recently. Here too, we find two small female images representing Vidyadharis or celestial nymphs next to the statue. At first glance, the crude rendering makes me date this statue to a later period, but some iconographical features like the two female figures and the absence of anthills around Bahubali's legs, as well as the large stone slab on which the image is carved, is convincing evidence to date it to the early 10th century. Inscriptions of the Western Gangas from this period supports this theory.
An important question that has always niggled in my mind is when and why did Bahubali attain a cult status in South India? What caused this figure to become so important that such a huge sculpture of Bahubali was commissioned in the late 10th century? To answer this question, I did some research on the literary traditions of that period. In the 9th century, a Jain scholar, Jinendranath, composed a text called Adi Purana in Sanskrit, describing the life of Rishabhanatha or Adinatha, and it was held in very high regard.
The mid 10th century witnessed a great efflorescence of Jain poetic writing in Kannada. Pampa, the earliest poet in Kannada, also composed a Champu Kavya with the same name, Adipurana, in a mix of Kannada and Sanskrit. Two other poets, Ponna and Ranna, also wrote prolifically on Jain and Puranic themes. Pampa describes the renunciation and the penance of Bahubali in vivid detail not seen before this. He paints a realistic picture of all the hardships that Bahubali braved, the heat of summer and rains, and details like birds building nests in his hair and anthills growing near his feet during the penance.
Pampa writes that Bahubali had conquered all the senses but still could not gain enlightenment. His sisters Brahmi and Sundari, after taking advice from their father, visited him at the spot where he was doing penance. They told him to get off the elephant he was riding. Bahubali understood the metaphor. He realized at that moment that he had still not conquered the elephant of his ego. At once he became humble, casting away the apprehensions and pride that were holding him back, such as the feeling that even the land that he was standing belonged to his brother. He then immediately achieved the status of Kevalan.
The emotional fervor that imbued such poetic writing brought a fresh surge of life to the old Jain stories.
Such writing in Kannada must have strongly appealed to the large Jain populace residing in southern India and could have been responsible for making Bahubali a cult figure. Interestingly, the practice of hero worship was also popular in Karnataka for many centuries. We find over 2000 stone memorials or virgals that were made for heroes who had died defending the land or committing other valorous deeds. This includes memorials for Jain monks who had fasted to death in a ritual called Sallekhana.
The Arathipur statue of Bahubali we just saw also looks more like a Viragar of the 10th century and is not a freestanding image fully in the round.
In my opinion, our Gomateshwara statue is a grand example of erecting a Viragal for a figure venerated in the Jain tradition. It amplifies the greatness of an eternal hero who has won over not just material land but also over his own ego. We should also look at the temple or monument building in the context of the socio and economical and political situation in the 10th century. These were vibrant times in India. The kingdoms were wealthy, and there was a multitude of religious sects thriving simultaneously. Not only Shaivism, Vaishnavism, and Jainism, and even Vajrayana Buddhism and Islam were coexisting in the southern Karnataka region in the 10th century. The Chalukyas, the Rashtrakutas, the Cholas, and the Pandyas were building magnificent temples in peninsular India. The skills of carving monolithic temples were also prevalent in many parts, ranging from the Upper Deccan with the great Kailasanatha cave temple at Ellora to the Pandya kingdom's Kalugumalai temple that has Jain carvings right next to it. The Western Ganga dynasty, which was ruling in this region from the 4th to the 10th century, was also building temples here. We can see these at the Talakadu temple complex, at the Begur temple in Bangalore, and at the Manni temple, which is also in rural Bangalore district.
The Western Gangas were also great patrons of Jain Basadis, as we can see at the Kambadahalli Basadi in Mandya district, at Arathipur, and at Shravan Belgola.
So, the inspiration, resources, and the skills required for making such a monument were present. So, who built this monument to Bahubali? There are a number of inscriptions in Kannada, Tamil, and Marathi at the base of the Gomateshwara sculpture, which proclaim that Chawandaraya had this made. A 12th century Marathi inscription says that the Suttalaya, or the passageway around the Gomateshwara statue, which houses a gallery of small sculptures of the Tirthankaras, was caused to be created by Sri Gangaraja, probably the Ganga king Brachamalla V. Chawandaraya, a general who served under 3 successive kings of the Ganga dynasty, was an erudite Jain scholar who wrote in Kannada.
Chamundiraya was extremely powerful and influential, as he was instrumental in warding off enemies of the Western Gangas and keeping their minor heirs on the throne.
Chawandaraya chose a sheer stone hill called Vindhagiri at Shravan Belgola to get the statue carved. Shravan Belgola, meaning the white pond of ascetics, was a Jain tirtha long before this image was carved. The Chandragiri hill here has many inscriptions from 600 CE onwards, as well as a cave where many Jain ascetics had meditated. In his book Inviting Death, Historical Experiments on Sepulchral Hill, acclaimed epigraphist S. Sattar, who has done extensive research on the inscriptions on this site, writes that Chandragiri Hill was then known as Katavapur. He says, as many as 700 pious men had invited death voluntarily on the cold rocks of Katavapur by the end of the 7th century AD. It was an exclusive center for self-mortification. Sattar also answers the question of why Chawandaraya chose an image of Bahubali. Because he thought that this image would better symbolize the suffering of self-mortifying monks and nuns on the summit of Katavapura than that of any of the Tirthankaras. Later stories say that Chawandaraya's mother wanted to visit a massive golden statue that is described by poets, most likely by Pampa, as having been built by Bharata to commemorate Bahubali's penance. This statue seems to have been built at Kodanpura in Telangana, where, according to Digambar Jain texts, Bahubali had ruled and also done penance. This also happens to be where Pampa was born. This might be one of the keys to understand the massive size of the sculpture. Perhaps Chavandaraya, knowing that such a statue didn't exist, realized that it was time to build one.
We could even consider the Aretapura complex to be a sort of prototype for the monuments on the twin hills at Shravanbelgula, the Basadiz on the one hill and the Bahubali Colossus on the other. A huge motivation for commissioning this sculpture could have been the need to build a Jain community by performing periodic rituals. The Maha Abhishek of this image every 12 years would have had the effect of bringing together the Jain community from across the country, reinforcing their culture and traditions.
Personally, I believe that it must have taken some effort to select the right location to execute this ambitious project. The grey granite at this spot is a perfect choice and it is virtually flawless. If you try to imagine how this feat was achieved 1,000 years ago, we can surmise that there was a team of experts, engineers, architects, geologists, and sculptors who tested the feasibility of carving out this image at the location. The architect cum master sculptor named Arishtanemi in later texts must have had to construct a scaffolding around a rock and carefully plan out how to shape the existing rock into the image without letting it collapse. So Chavandaraya has to be given the credit not only of visualization of this beautiful image, but also of finding the right resources to complete the carving and polishing it to the finish it now has. To the modern eye, the proportions may look somewhat unrealistic. The shoulders are very broad, the thighs and legs seem a little short and squat. But remember that the image was carved according to Jain canons, which dictate the proportions and everything about how such sculptures should be made. The proportions could also be ascribed to the technical challenge of making such a huge statue stand on its own. It has to have breadth to keep it stable.
Some older formulas are broken here. Bahubali's hairstyle is shown in curls, like the one seen at Aratipura, not the long hair we have been accustomed to. All subsidiary figures, like the sisters, are missing. It is only Bahubali who rises up to the sky in an awe inspiring vision. Anthills, which have never been seen before, appear here, thanks perhaps to Pampa's description. These anthills and the creepers give the image stability both structurally and visually.
Sculpturally speaking, this image is a symphony of organic breathing volumes. I call it a symphony of volumes. Notice how the form of the spirals and concentric circles is repeated in the various parts of the image, such as the curls of the hair, the nipples, and even in the anthills. The huge leaves and flowers of the Madhavi Lata creeper provide a delicate, detailed contrast to the smooth volumes of the body. And again, the strong spiral form of its stems seems to grasp and hold the image in its place. Like the face, the fingers, hands, and feet, down to the cuticles of his nails, are so beautifully carved that they make you gasp in awe. This shows that despite the rigid canons, the sculptor could bring such freshness and liveliness to the stone sculpture. Other images often look rigid, but we find this liveliness in some of the early bronze images and this sculpture at Badami. I would dare say that no other image so huge has been carved with such eye to detail and is yet overall so simple and well integrated in design. Obviously, the making of this monument was extremely inspirational for the Digambar Jain community. A number of poets wrote poems celebrating its beauty and glory, and stories about Chavandaraya abounded. The image was called Gommateshwara, as Gommata was one of the names of Chavandaraya. But subsequently, Gommateshwar became a generic name for all images of Bahubali. It set the precedent for commissioning many more monumental Gummateshwara figures in the region. These later sculptures serve the purpose that they were erected for, but from an artistic perspective, none matches the stature and the grace of this original Gummateshwar image. The other impressive sculpture is at Karkala in Udupi district, which is 42 feet tall. It was carved and pulled up on a hillock in the 15th century. What does it mean for us today? It would be remiss if we don't consider how this massive statue is completely naked. In a previous video, I had mentioned that nakedness or nudity was neither frowned upon or considered obscene in ancient India. Mythologist Devdatta Patnaik writes in his book Bahubali 63 Insights into Jainism that nakedness indicates indifference to the world around. Nudity indicates a desire to engage. The Gommateshwara statue is testimony to how nakedness was a part of religious ideology. Even today, we accept this fact as thousands of visitors of all faiths, not just Digambar Jains, throng to visit this monument as an artistic endeavor of antiquity. Do you know of any other culture where such a huge naked statue is adored by millions of people for the spiritual values it represents, that of humility and the subjugation of one's ego? Isn't it really wonderful that we can see such a diversity of thought and its rich expression in our ancient sculpture? Let me know what you think of my analysis of the cult of Bahubali and how the image evolved from being one of the Digambar Jain pantheon to a towering hero. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And mention in the comments if there's a particular sculpture you would like me to analyze next. Thank you for watching.